Hello Year 5, welcome to Monday's English lesson where we are going to be starting with a little bit of an embedded clause surgery because on Friday you were looking at writing a recount of the chapter from Florida's point of view, and today we're going to carry on with that recount. We are going to edit it and make it longer, so we're going to add in some more. So on Friday we were looking at Florida's plane journey, and today we are going to be looking at Florida's reaction to realizing she is in China. Okay, so here we are then. This is the embedded clause surgery. Number 1. What don't we understand? How should we start an embedded clause? Now this is tricky because I say, oh, use an embedded clause, but that's in the middle of a sentence. So how should I make sure that the start of my embedded clause makes sense? Now, I've got 2 top tips for you here. You can use a rembedded clause, so a relatively embedded clause, a relative clause, which I know you guys can do because we've done so many of them before. Or I would recommend, if you are not doing a relative clause and you just want an embedded clause, to use an action to tell me what is happening. So, for example, we could say, Liam, running as fast as he could, raced down the airplane steps. Now let's double check that I've included everything I need to. So I've got Liam, comma, running as fast as he could, comma, race down the airplane steps. Now remember that we need to look at it like a sandwich. If we take out the filling, we should have the rest of the sentence still making sense. So Liam raced down the airplane steps does make sense. However, we have added some extra detail. He is running as fast as he can. He is super excited to have landed where he thinks the theme park is. So Liam, comma, running as fast as he could, comma, race down the airplane steps. So if you're struggling to think of a way to start your embedded clause, have a think about your relative clauses, your rembedded clauses, if you will, and some actions to tell me what is happening, what are the characters doing. Okay, here, number 2. What is the marvellous mistake? Liam was running as fast as he could. Now, that is a sentence. However, it's not a very good sentence. It's not a very informative sentence, and it's got a random comma here which doesn't make sense. It doesn't need a comma when it's this short. When it's a short sentence with one single clause, we don't need any commas. So how can we adjust this one? Well, this is where we could add in the relative clause word. So we've got, get my typing back up, Liam, who was running as fast as he could. And this is where we need another comma, because on either side of our embedded clause has to be commas, which means that this sentence isn't finished yet. So Liam, who was running as fast as he could, couldn't wait to see the rocket. Liam, comma, who was running as fast as he could, couldn't wait to see the rocket. And we've got that who here as our relative, and we've got our commas on either side. Okay, number 3, what do we need to fix? The positioning of our commas. The plane, as luxurious as a Bentley was, the biggest aircraft Liam had ever seen. Now that sentence has just confused me because if I pause where the commas are, which is what I should be doing when I'm reading, it doesn't make sense. The plane, as luxurious as a Bentley was, the biggest aircraft Liam had ever seen. Do you know where these commas are supposed to be going? Have a think. Maybe pause me. Okay. The plane. Ooh, there we go. The plane, as luxurious as a Bentley was, the biggest aircraft Liam had ever seen. Where would you put the commas? Well, what are we adding extra information about? We are adding extra information about the plane. So our first comma is going to go after our noun of the plane. As luxurious as a Bentley was the biggest aircraft Liam had ever seen. So we've got the plane was the biggest aircraft Liam had ever seen. And we've added extra information, as luxurious as a Bentley. The plane, as luxurious as a Bentley, was the biggest aircraft Liam had ever seen. So this is our embedded clause here. Okay, here is another comma one for you. Florida, shrieking like a chicken, was loving all of the attention. I haven't just got to add my commas, I've also got to add some punctuation if you have a look at the end of that sentence. Top tip for you. Okay, Florida, shrieking like a chicken, was loving all of the attention. What is the noun in this sentence that we are adding extra information? It is Florida, so our comma has to go after our noun. Shrieking like a chicken was loving all of the attention. So Florida was loving all of the attention, but as well as that, she was shrieking like a chicken. Okay, I hope that has helped. Feel free to come back to this screen when you are editing your own work to have a look at. Okay, so have a look at the work that you did on Friday, the first few paragraphs of Florida's recount on the aircraft. Are there any marvellous mistakes similar to the ones that I've made here that you now know how to fix? Have a read and see how many you can fix. And then we will carry on with writing the next part of our recount. Okay guys, have a look here. I have had a go at writing my next paragraph from Florida's point of view. Okay, it's just where she realises the plane lands and she realises that they're in China. I want you to help me out here. Okay, I'm going to read you what I've written so far and then we'll go through this list here for you to help me edit my paragraph. After a super smooth landing which didn't even mess up my hair, I looked out of the window and saw a sea of sand. Confused, I turned to Liam and told him I didn't know England had deserts. Eddie Xanadu laughed at me and said we were in China. I turned to Liam and shrieked, "How could we be in China, you idiot?" Now, that's an okay paragraph, but it could definitely be better, and there is a marvellous mistake in there somewhere. Can you spot that marvellous mistake? Yes, I hope you managed to spot it. I didn't put in my commas. So, in my first sentence, it should be after a super smooth landing, comma, before my relative clause word, which didn't even mess up my hair, comma, I looked out of the window and saw a sea of sand. Now that sentence is already much better. Okay, after a super smooth landing, which didn't even mess up my hair, I looked out of the window and saw a sea of sand. Confused, I turned to Liam and told him I didn't know England had deserts. Eddie Xanadu laughed at me and said we were in China. Now, this is quite a short sentence. Eddie Xanadu laughed at me and said we were in China. So how can I make it longer and better? I can add some more information. What is Eddie Xanadu doing when he is laughing at Florida? Because Florida wasn't talking to him in the first place. She was talking to Liam. So maybe we could put in Eddie Xanadu interrupting laughed at me and said we were in China. Now it's quite, how would you describe interrupting someone? It's quite rude, isn't it? So what I might do is I might add part of an embedded clause in here. Eddie Xanadu, and remember I need the bread for my sandwich, so I need a comma. Interrupting rudely, laughed at me and said we were in China. So Eddie Xanadu interrupting rudely, so that's the action that he's doing and how he's doing it, comma, laughed at me and said we were in China. Now that's got way more information in already. Okay, so now I want to add in a relative clause. I have got one up here that you helped me correct before, but how could I add a relative embedded clause or rembedded clause into my last sentence? I turned to Liam and shrieked, "How can we be in China, you idiot?" Now, the noun I think I'm going to add in a relative embedded clause in is about Liam. Now I could use who. I turned to Liam who was shocked. Or I could use who. However, I use who quite a lot, so I think I'm going to mix it up a bit. I'm going to challenge myself and I'm going to use whose. So I'm going to describe something that belongs to Liam. So I turn to Liam whose cheeks went bright red. So I turn to Liam whose cheeks were red because he knows that he lied and tricked her. I like that. So I have my comma. Okay. I turn to Liam whose cheeks were... Oh, I've missed. Hang on, let me move this down. Otherwise we won't be able to see it. I turn to Liam whose cheeks were blazing red and shrieked, "How can we be in China, you idiot?" Okay, let me double check. Let me do a quick comma check. I've got a comma here. I turn to Liam whose cheeks were blazing red and shrieked, "How can we be in China, you idiot?" But I'm missing one here. Why am I missing one here? Because that is the end of our embedded clause. So before I have "and shrieked," I need to add in my other comma. So I turn to Liam whose cheeks were blazing red, comma, and shrieked, "How can we be in China, you idiot?" So why have I got my comma down here? I've got my comma down here because it's after the verb before a bit of direct speech. Have you spotted which bonus skills I've added in today? Now I've added in some bonus skills. I've got some direct speech, which I know we were working on last week, and I've got some reported speech. Confused, I turned to Liam and told him I didn't know England had deserts. That's not exactly what she said. That is her explaining what she said to Liam. So that's a little bit of reported speech, sorry. Okay, let's have another quick check of the skills we've got in here. After a super smooth landing, which didn't even mess up my hair, a nice bit of relative, I looked out the window and saw a sea of sand. Now, that's a lovely metaphor because it's not actually a sea. It just looks like a sea of sand, so that's a cheeky little metaphor I put in there. Confused, I turned to Liam and told him I didn't know England had deserts. Eddie Xanadu, comma, interrupting rudely, cheeky little embedded clause there, laughed at me and said we were in China. I turned to Liam, whose cheeks were blazing red, another relative embedded, and shrieked, "How can we be in China, you idiot?" And that is our direct speech at the end there. Okay, so let's go on to your task today. Finishing off the all recount from Florida's point of view and what she might be thinking as she looks around and realises she's in China. Now here is an embedded clause checklist for you. Do you have extra information in the middle of your sentence? You can't just have two parts of your sentence, the sentence and extra information at the end. You've got to make that extra information the filling of your embedded clause sandwich. Is it with your comma bread on either side of it? And if you take it out completely, will it still make sense? That's the biggest test for your embedded clauses. Make sure you read them without them to make sure that they are definitely adding extra information to a full sentence. And you can always see if you can meet up with a friend virtually, of course, to have a little embedded clause workshop to test each other's sentences out. Remember that if you have any questions about embedded clauses or you want us to check some of your sentences, then pop along to the daily drop-in session at 12:10 today. Okay, have a wonderful Monday, guys. Bye-bye.